I'm joined today by Eugene Kiver. Thanks for talking with us. So let's start with the most basic of basic questions. What is Corepunk? What is this game you guys are working on?
In a nutshell, Corepunk is a top-down MMORPG in a vast, seamless open world with fog of war. Like initially, we thought we really wanted to have this experience of playing with fog of war in an open world, and we weren't able to find any other place, so we decided to build this game.
And this is like a traditional MMO, right? Like this will be a large explorable world.
Lately, there's a lot of instance-based games and session-based games, and there's not a lot of like classic MMOs. I mean, where you can meet thousands of people in persistent world. So yeah, that's pretty traditional MMORPG.
And you mentioned it already, but this was something I did want to talk about, which was the fog of war specifically. You know, fog of war is something we usually see in stuff like RTSs, that sort of thing, not really like MMO. Why was it important to you to include this? Why did you want to see an MMO with fog of war like this? And kind of what does it bring to Corepunk?
Well, it creates a lot of these encounters that you would not expect to get in a game where you see like 4 kilometers in front of you. You don't know what awaits you behind the next corner. Like what will happen? You can meet a foe. You can get into the fight because we have this open world PvP, so you can get attacked anywhere in the world, or you can create this ambushes on other people, or you can meet a friend who you can meet someone in the forest, you chat to him and become friends for a very long time. You don't know what awaits to you.
And let's talk about some of those environments that you'll be discovering under Fog of War too, because you just mentioned one is like something I noticed back when your gameplay reveal trailer back in December, I believe it was. There's a ton of visual variety in this game. You know, it's one moment you're looking at like steampunk style trains, another moment you're in like a neon cyberpunk city, and then another you're in more of a traditional, fantasy based MMO forest fighting creatures. So like, what are some of the themes you'll see in Corepunk?
Yeah, actually the trailer was kind of packed with all these environments. So yeah, in an actual game, they are much more spread out all in the world. But there's 4 basic cultures and themes we wanted to see in Corepunk. That's monopunk, which like fantasy basically. This cyberpunk, steampunk, and post-apocalyptic dieselpunk. So, but there are cities of these cultures are really like far apart, so they're not be like blended in one city, but there's kind of eclectic. There's a lot of mix of cultures in a game.
And that was like an explicit goal, was to sort of focus around. I mean, I know the name is Corepunk, so it was really to kind of go around these different sort of punky ideas.
Yeah, at some point we just realized that there's a lot of punk styles in the game, and this world of Corepunk, its lore is that it is like a cradle of life, and basically it's just a core for everything. So we decided to just call it Corepunk. And
switching to the actual meat of the game, the actual things like combat, classes, how does Corepunk handle sort of the more like a traditional MMO class system, something like that?
We have 4 archetypes. Those are tank, heal, damage dealer, and support. Like, support is getting much more attention lately in session-based games, so we're fans of that archetype too, so we decided to add this class. And in terms of how you would select your class, we have 12 heroes and 6 that we are focusing on to bring into closed beta. And each hero has 3 weapon masteries, and basically each weapon mastery is your class. So yeah, you have that's how it works.
So there's 12 heroes each with 3 weapon masteries. So that's a lot of kind of choice in sort of how you decide to bring your character.
Yes, that's a lot. But like, for example, you can be like, not all classes are in one character, right? There's just only 3 weapon masteries, but basically kind of weapon you can use with that hero. And you can switch between them and upgrade them. Yeah, but there's a lot of like distinct fighting styles in a game with that many characters and 3 masteries each. Yeah.
So I gotta ask, if there's a healing archetype and a support archetype, how do the two differ? Because a lot of times those two are sort of interchangeably used.
Yeah, but support is more about controls, helping people, and like, if you're in a raid, your primary goal is to heal, but support can stop someone, can help you. So just more diversity is more diverse. Yeah.
A lot more utility, more than just straight up keeping people alive. Cool.
Yeah.
What about the combat specifically too? Because in some of the gameplay you've already shown off, and it's you've got a lot of like big red circles that you have to dodge out of the way of, that sort of thing. It seems very action packed, very kind of dynamic, rather than just right click and take your hands off of the controls and be done.
Yeah, like in a lot of MMOs, you get to the cap level and you're not interested in an open world anymore. So there's just mobs that are staying like at some spots, and you just hit everything you have, like spawn all your abilities, and you kill them. And we really wanted to make this part of the game interesting to higher level players. So each camp, it consists of different mobs, and they get rearranged each time you kill them off. So they actually work together. Some of them keep distance to like range type. Some of them will heal other parts of that camp. So they're help and they cooperate. And you have to move, and we really wanted to make it like a part of the game because it's much more interesting.
And so that also sounds like enemy variety is kind of, or enemy variety and also enemy behavior is pretty important in that. Can you tell me a little bit kind of how you're tackling enemies and the things you'll actually be going up against?
Some enemies can have different abilities every time they're spawned. So like, for example, a zombie, for example, it can, after you kill him, it will explode, for example, and you did not expected that from him. So some will like use like for example, freeze you and they'll give levers to other like mobs to attack you while you're frozen. So they're different every time. You usually don't know what you have to adjust your tactics every time. Every time you meet a camp, you need to think about whether you have to. How would you approach it?
And what about, I know this is early since you guys aren't even in beta yet, so it's sort of maybe jumping the gun a little bit to talk about this, but you mentioned sort of like in some other MMOs, these mobs just sort of like being there for high level players. What do you guys imagine the end game of Corepunk looks like? Are you going to have these giant raids? Are you going to expect people to go into PvP? How do you hope for like dedicated players to be engaging with it for a long time?
Yeah, that's actually a problem for a lot of modern MMOs, that they have too much of too little, basically, of high-end content. Basically, 40% of our game is for you to get to the cap level, and after that, 60% of the game is high-level content, and it's open world. It's like vast wilderness where you can find like rare monsters, rare world bosses. That's dungeons, that's randomly generated dungeons and custom dungeons. There's also raids and arenas, battlegrounds, just plenty of things to do, basically.
Well, great. Eugene, thank you so much for joining us, telling us all about Corepunk. It was a pleasure to have you on.